diagnostic criteria. This epidemic denial has become a feature in the mainstream media, and it's based on an industry canard. And obviously, there are people who don't want us to look at environmental exposures. And then there's an individual injury. These are kids this is a preventable disease. We know it's an environmental exposure. It has to be. Genes do not cause epidemics. They can provide a vulnerability. You need an environmental toxin. That the amount of money and resources put into studying genetic causes, which is a dead end, has been historically 10 to 20 times the amount spent by NIH and other agencies to study environmental factors, to study exposures, to study external factors, and that's where we're going to find the answer. And within 3 weeks, and probably we're hoping in 2 weeks, we're going to announce a series of new studies to identify precisely what the environmental toxins are that are causing it.
Okay, so a few things I want to unpack here, but I am going to start by saying if you have autism, if you are neurodivergent, or you have people like this in your family, I would love to hear your voices and opinions on this topic. But to start, first of all, experts have forcefully pushed back against this claim that autism is a, quote, preventable disease, with one of the experts who collected data for the CDC study saying autism is not an infectious disease, so there aren't preventative measures that we can take. And you also had others echoing that, explaining that autism is actually considered a lifelong developmental condition that affects the brain, and pushing back on Kennedy's claim that the increased rates are an epidemic. And beyond that, experts also say that Kennedy's claim that autism is caused solely by some sort of environmental factor that can be eliminated rather than genetic factors is flat out wrong. Right? It's widely agreed on that autism is a complex condition that doesn't have a single cause, with, for example, Zachary Warren, a pediatric psychiatrist and autism researcher at Vanderbilt University, explaining, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of different neurogenetic factors that, in combination with complicated environmental interactions, influence presentations of autism. And what's more, existing research actually shows that autism is heavily influenced by certain genetic factors, which totally contradicts Kennedy's claim that studying the role of genes in autism has been a dead end. Well, notably, researchers have also said that more work does need to be done to study the role environmental factors play in this. Kennedy's all or nothing approach, it's fundamentally wrong. Especially because even if environmental factors do play a role, there's no evidence right now to support this idea that autism can be prevented or cured. In fact, some experts say we need to do the exact opposite of what Kennedy has proposed, right? Arguing that instead of looking at environmental components, researchers would be better off doing more studies into the genetic factors of autism and funding efforts to develop new services for people with autism. And so as a result of all this, you have many experts saying that Kennedy is actually hurting people with autism by spreading blatant misinformation to justify a flawed approach that will divert resources from things that could actually be helpful. Right? And to that point, we've also seen many people slamming Kennedy for using rhetoric that is actively harmful to this community.
Autism destroys families. More importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children. These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old. And these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children, and we need to put an end to it.
Now, first off, again, I need to clarify, there is no evidence for his claim that many kids who have autism didn't have it until they were 2 years old and then suddenly got infected by some kind of environmental toxin. But that claim is very notable because RFK Jr. has made similar comments in the past about vaccines causing autism in children who previously had no symptoms. And while he did not directly mention vaccination in the press conference, it is very important to connect those dots between his past comments and his remarks yesterday about this mysterious environmental toxin that's causing autism. And then beyond that, others have also accused him of using offensive and inaccurate stereotypes to paint all autistic people as this single group that's totally unable to function in society, and presenting autism as some sort of horrible affliction that we need to get rid of. For one thing, autism is an enormous spectrum. There's a huge range of symptoms and severity, but plenty of people with autism, they live perfectly functional lives. Just one prominent example that comes to mind here is Elon Musk, who has what used to be referred to as Asperger's, now just part of autism spectrum disorder, which I will say I'm interested to know his thoughts about these comments from Trump's health secretary, especially because, in fact, the same same new CDC report that Kennedy was talking about here, it found that fewer than 40% of the children with autism were classified as having an intellectual disability. But also, even beyond the highly functioning folks, experts also say that it's harmful for RFK Jr. to be presenting more severe cases of autism in such a negative light, with one expert explaining, "I am not dismissing the challenges. There are considerable challenges, and a lot of those are barriers to services." And adding, "We've been doing a parent retreat weekend for 27 years where we spend a weekend with 60 parents and family members, and we're not meeting with family members and parents who say autism is just a tragedy and it's hell in our lives. They talk about the positives and the negatives and the joys as well as the challenges." And that's something that we've seen echoed by numerous parents of children with autism as well as autistic adults themselves. Like, for example, you had an autistic mother named Meg Raby who works with neurodivergent children as a speech language pathologist, writing an op-ed responding to Kennedy's claim saying, "Kennedy's rhetoric doesn't just misunderstand autism, it crosses off the humanity of autistic people. It reduces us to burdens or symptoms instead of recognizing us as whole people. It fuels fear and parents' shame in kids and hopelessness in communities. It adds to the exhaustion of families who are already doing everything they can to support their children, feel like we're something to mourn instead of someone to love." But on that note, that is where I'm going to end this segment today. And of course, like I said earlier, I would love to know your thoughts on this story and this whole situation. And then we'll get some more news in just a moment. But have you ever been to a dentist who insists on chatting while your mouth's just full of tools? Or maybe a therapist whose only availability is smack dab in the middle of your workday? Or the really annoying one where you waited 6 months to see your primary care doctor for something that just kind of couldn't wait? Because we've all settled when it comes to healthcare, but it doesn't have to be that way. Thanks to today's sponsor, ZocDoc, finding the right doctor is actually easy. They make it simple to get the care that you need without all the hassle, and I know because I use ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. They're connecting you with over 100,000 doctors across every specialty, from mental health to dental, primary to urgent care, and more. Search by location, availability, and insurance. By the way, you'll find up front who takes your insurance, and find doctors who prioritize your health with no compromises. And ZocDoc lets you see real-time availability and book on the spot. Most appointments are within 24 to 72 hours, sometimes even same day, no more 6-month waits. So stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/Phil or scan the QR code to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/Phil, ZocDoc.com/Phil. But then, next up from that, we got to talk about how you are now already seeing Donald Trump's showdown with Harvard escalating massively, with him not only holding back funds, but also threatening to effectively ban foreign students from attending and even going after their tax-exempt status. And the key thing is that whatever happens, the future of higher education in the United States, it may depend on it. But with that, this sort of kicked off last week when the Trump administration sent a letter demanding that Harvard change its admissions, hiring, and governance practices, including, for example, demanding that the school, quote, immediately shutter all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Though this, while simultaneously demanding you could call it a different kind of DEI, with Trump demanding that they take steps to ensure greater so-called viewpoint diversity among both students and faculty. With them then also accusing the school's leaders of failing to keep Jewish students safe and allowing anti-Semitism on campus, with one of the related demands being that the university keep out students, quote, hostile to the American values and institutions inscribed in the U.S. Constitution and Declaration of Independence, including students supportive of terrorism or anti-Semitism. Though notably, of course, it may be the administration's own actions that are actually hostile to the Constitution. With a seeing, for example, Harvard's president arguing that the demands violate the university's First Amendment rights, saying, "No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue." And then adding, the university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights. Now with that, you then had Education Secretary Linda McMahon firing back at that claim, claiming in an interview on Newsmax that she supported debate and disagreement on campus and saying this is actually about civil rights and student safety. Though, key thing, even if that is their true intent, the Trump administration may still be breaking the law. Right? Specifically here, it may be defying federal regulations which say that the government must identify and list violations, offer a hearing, notify Congress, and then wait 30 days before applying penalties. So with that, it's not shocking to learn that the faculty union at Harvard is actually suing the Trump administration, as is the one at Columbia University. But there's also seeing the attorneys in one of the lawsuits writing, these procedures exist because Congress recognized that allowing federal agencies to hold funding hostage or to cancel it cavalierly would give them dangerously broad power in a system in which institutions depend so heavily upon federal funding. But a huge thing is while all that is playing out, the Trump administration is staying on the offensive, with us also saying now that they're threatening to take away Harvard's ability to welcome international students, with Homeland Security Secretary and so-called Ice Barbie cosplayer Kristi Noem reportedly demanding detailed records on Harvard's foreign students' visa holders' illegal and violent activities. And with that, saying that the cost of non-compliance will be the immediate loss of the university's Student and Exchange Visitor Program, or SEVP certification. And then, on top of that, she reportedly canceled $2.7 million worth of grants to the university university that she claimed undermine America's values and security. Now, of course, those dollars are relatively small beans for a place like Harvard, but the possibility of losing out on international students, I mean, that could be huge. Right? The school's nearly 7,000 international students. They reportedly make up more than a quarter of its enrollment in the 2024-2025 academic year. Although I will say it's not immediately clear how many of those are here on the types of visas that will